Welcome to the channel. Thank you everyone for tuning in. So in front of you guys, I have two watches which look almost identical. My job today is to do a comparison between the two and let you know which one is the best made watch and also the best value for money. Now, of course, you guys probably know what these watches are. To my left, I have my first ever Tandorio, and to my right, I have the IXDAO Serica Homage. Now, when this watch came out and I went in the review, is one of the best made watches available at that time from AliExpress. This one is still within my collection and I absolutely fell in love with this watch made by IXDAO. Now, Tandorio since then have made a much cheaper alternative, but is it cheaper in build quality as well? That's what we need to find out. And I'll tell you what now already, that I was very surprised by this Tandorio. It's actually not that different. And considering the price point they're selling this at, this is the best value for money in comparison to both these watches. But hang around for the small details and find out where they do differ. So regarding specifications, both watches are exactly the same. They both have a stainless steel case construction. They both use top hat with the underside dome, AR coated sapphire crystals. They both have a ceramic bezel insert, or half ceramic, half steel. They both feature 120 click unidirectional bezels, and they also both have a claimed water resistance of 200 meters. Now, my take on water resistance from any watch from AliExpress, unless tested, I disregard it. But Tandorio has been known to fail on some water resistance tests completed by other watch reviewers. Now, the one on my left comes with the Seiko NH35. I did cheap out. I didn't go for the PT5000 version. And the one on my right, the IXDAO, is the PT5000 version. It's the cheapest movement offering they have. So between the two, with the Tandorio, you can get NH35 and the PT5000. Prices are £68 for the NH35 and £94 for the PT5000, which is ridiculous value for money. With the IXDAO, the PT5000 starts at £220 and it goes up to £280 for the Sellita SW200, which in its own right is still great value. And then for the ETA 2824, it goes all the way up to £265. I would disregard that option because the Sellita is just as good, if not better. So dimensions wise, again, there's hardly anything between them. Diameter on both is 40 millimeters. You have a case thickness of 13.4 millimeters on the Tandorio due to the usage of the NH35. What I don't know is if the PT5000 version is slimmer. The thickness on the IXDAO is 12.5 millimeters, which is very decent. Lug to lug on the Tandorio is 47.5 millimeters compared to 48 millimeters on the IXDAO, and both have a lug width of 20 millimeters. The crank size, there is a very marginally small difference. On the Tandorio, it's 7.4 millimeters, and on the IXDAO, it's 7.3. So as I said, between the two, in terms of specifications, dimensions, there isn't anything really, but that's very common when I do these kind of comparisons. The main differences will be in the smaller details and the features and the different aspects. The first thing we want to start off on is the dial. How different is the dial on the Tandorio than the iPose or the IXDAO? So first and foremost, they have a printed logo, which the IXDAO doesn't. Now, the white dial I have on both, there is a slight difference. You'll find the white on the IXDAO is a bit more off-white and it's a bit brighter in comparison to the one on the Tandorio, which looks slightly silvery. Now, the other difference which I noticed was in the printing. Now, if you pay attention to the red text and the automatic text above the 6 on the Tandorio, you'll find it is quite a bit faint, but it still is printed, right? It's not that bad. It doesn't have any missing print. The one on the IXDAO is just a bit more pronounced. It's a lot more legible and just a better quality of printing, but not by a lot. The second aspect of the dial is, of course, the handset, and you guys can see this from a mile off. The Tandorio uses much cheaper hands. They are a bit smaller as well, and in terms of proportions and length, the minute hand does not touch that minute track. The second hand does though, which is okay, but they also suffer with legibility when we look at the black dial variant on the Tandorio. But in comparison, the IXDAO has got them bang on. They're slightly larger, they're a lot more visible, and of course the proportion and the length is perfect. Now, looking at the dial itself, the hour markers, when we turn the watch on its side, you can see that the hour markers are slightly raised. Now, that's an indication of how good the lume should be. Now, you can see the IXDAO has a lot of layers of lume. You can see how pronounced those applied markers are. The Tandorio isn't that far off it, to be honest, so I expect the lume to be quite close too. So let's do that lume shot comparison right now, and you'll see, shockingly, the Tandorio is not that far off. The IXDAO, of course, we know there's a lot of layers, so that is nuclear lume right over there. It is literally shining through that camera, very bright. Every mark has got a little aura around it. That's how bright this lume is. The handset matches perfectly, great lume match, and yeah, again, very bright and super legible, and you'll have great longevity. Now, in comparison, the Tandorio is not actually far off. It's not as punchy as the IXDAO lume, but it is more than adequate, especially the hour markers. They are very bright, and as I said, very surprising to me. However, the handset, this is where it slightly fails. They're a lot duller, they're a bit patchy as well, and off lume, you can see that the lume does not match. There's a lot less layers applied to the handset, which is definitely not going to help this watch at all, but a very subtle difference. So moving on to the bezel inserts, to be honest, I did not see anything worth mentioning in terms of the difference on the actual markings on the bezel inserts. The construction looks very similar. There might be something just minuscule, like I think the size of the text on the bezel insert, but again, nothing worth mentioning, totally negligible. Now, when we look at the actual construction, they both have a coin edge bezel, and again, guys, I found little or no difference. They feel the same in hand, the build quality feels the same. Now, there is a difference on rotation, but again, very subtle difference, not that far off. So what this bezel does well, it's got a very nice and smooth rotation. It does have really nice clicks. It also lines up perfectly at the 12. What I don't like too much about it, or where it underperforms slightly, is that you've got the tiniest bit of play in there, but there is no bounce. It doesn't feel weak, and it also has a slightly looser rotation than what we have in the iPos, but it still is resistant enough to stop your thumb doing this, but that is the only very subtle difference. So let me compare it against the iPos now, or the IXDAO. So it just sounds a bit more refined than the one on the Tandorio. This one also lines up. I know a few people had misaligned bezels, but that's just, that's part of the game, isn't it? That's what happens. Yeah, it does line up, but I keep missing the marker. You've also got a dark green pip as opposed to the white on the Tandorio. But yeah, it's a bit more solid as well, and quite well made. Moving on to the case, I think this is where you see, I think the biggest difference aside from the handset is the case finishing. Now, I expected the Tandorio to be not as good as the IXDAO, but again, it's not that far off. So we turn our attention to the side of the case. You'll see the brushing. It is quite soft. It's not coarse at all. You can see the fine grain on there. And if we pay attention to those lugs where you get the transition between the polishing and the brushing, this is where you'll see your biggest problem. You can see how it's not crisp, it's not very well defined. You can see the edge is quite blurry, where you do have a bit of overrun. So again, it's missing out on that crispness, which is expected, I think, for the price point. But again, for the price point, the brushing is very smooth, and the case itself is defined really well. The case back is, generic. It does have some specifications on there. You've got some sandblasted center, and you've got some circular brushing on the outside, but it doesn't have any branding, nor does the crown. But for that £68, you can't really complain. Now, comparatively, the IXDAO, this is where it is quite a bit more refined. If we take a look at those same lugs, you'll find a crisp line, very precise in the transition, very smooth brushing. Now, the brushing on the side of the case is at least one level above that you see on the IXDAO, on the Tandorio, sorry. You see just a very smooth grain on the side, and you just get a cleaner cut on the actual case. There's just a bit more definition. So imagine, the Tandorio is, I don't know, 640p or, whatever, but the IXDAO comes in at 1080. So just a bit more definition, just that little bit more refinement. The case back also, very similar to the Tandorio, nothing fancy on there. You've got the logo, you've got similar kind of brushing and engraving of the specifications. Now, where you are actually going to feel the difference between both watches is, of course, the strap. One thing unique about the IXDAO is that they executed the whole strap that you find on the Serica. They managed to get the end links just right. They managed to get this, bespoke bracelet built perfectly. You've got these flattened links. Even the clasp mechanism is all good and well, and I feel it completes the whole watch. In fact, the bracelet was the part that stood out and made me interested in this watch. That's why I bought it. So I think for me, seeing the Serica and then seeing this IXDAO and how well executed it is, the watch would be incomplete without this strap, because I believe they pair up so well. Now, of course, you can put, anything after this. You can put, I think, a rubber strap or leather strap, anything you want. But this is what you won't get with the Tandorio. The Tandorio comes with an aftermarket silicone waffle strap. It's not even a premium FKM, just your bog standard silicone waffle, which is very cheap. But there are also very cheap alternatives on AliExpress, where you can get a higher grade of strap, again for little, for little amount of money. So that's not that much of a big issue. But for me, in terms of wearability and completion, I would suffer if I never got that strap. I would, find it a negative. But on the whole, I am very impressed with what Tandorio has been able to do. As I showed you guys, as I demonstrated it, that there's not that much difference at all. This is the closest comparison I've seen on a lot of comparisons that I've done. I don't see any deal breakers on the Tandorio. Now, why is the IXDAO over £120 more? When I say more, I mean the PT5000 equivalent of the Tandorio. Where is all that cost gone? So having looked at this Tandorio, I definitely do believe that the IXDAO does have a fair bit of markup on there, but we also got to consider that the IXDAO does have slightly better quality dials. They also have, I think, a few more bespoke features, especially the different colorways available and the different designs. So, they do offer you just that much more. If that equates to £120 more, I don't know, guys, you tell me. I personally don't think it does, but it just gives you just a bit more on that side. But that's it from me today, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Which one would you go for? I know these Tandorios are very popular. They literally fly like hotcakes. Or would you put in that extra just to get the more refined product? Again, let me know your thoughts. So that's it from me today, guys. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.